All right. So look, and I don't know, is Shai on?
He's not on yet. I know he will be on shortly.
Okay. So just, I guess I'll jump into this. I do have a few remarks because I, regardless if it's 114 people or 14 people, I think it's still important to mark, what it is we're doing and why we're taking time out of our day to be here. But I do want to, when Shai comes, if he comes, to thank Shai. For those of you who don't know, I mean, for us to have we do have a shaliach this year. It happens to be virtual. We were one of a very select few communities in North America that actually received a virtual shaliach. And, I think it's great. And I think Shai has been working with the Lippman students lately. And I hope that we'll be able to use him to his full potential in the community the best we can. Obviously, everyone is doing the virtual, programming and whatnot, but I definitely think he's a value add, and I'm very happy that he's able to be with the community. So, and for those of you who don't know, I mean, my connection to Israel, I moved to Israel right after high school. I had an opportunity to play football in college and decided I was going to move to kibbutz. So I lived in Israel for about 2 years, and I've gone back and forth about over 24 times for work and whatnot. So, this day and Yom HaZikaron are very special to me, and they mean a lot. So, when we look at these days, it's been said that, Jews have two memorial days, right? We have Yom HaZikaron and we have Yom HaShoah. Yom HaZikaron reminds us of the cost of having Israel. Yom HaShoah reminds us the cost of not having Israel. And 2 weeks ago in our community, we observed Yom HaShoah. And, we gathered today to commemorate both Yom Ha'atzmaut, but also Yom HaZikaron, which those of you who've been to Israel know the importance of Yom HaZikaron coming first and all that happens in Israel, transitioning from one to the other. But on Yom HaZikaron, we honor the memories of the fallen, and frankly, we should every day. We honor them with every statement of pride about Israel. We honor them with the freedom that we as Jews in the United States have to direct our own future. We have self-determination. And it's because that freedom stems from the establishment and the success of the state of Israel. So by living a life full of freedoms, which they fought and died for, we honor them by ensuring the safety and security and prosperity of the one and only Jewish state. So those are my thoughts on Yom HaZikaron. But we also honor them today by taking part in, and it may not be today where, everything's a little off schedule when you go diaspora to Israel, but we are taking part in the global, exuberant celebration of Israel's independence, of Yom Ha'atzmaut. And that is also a part of honoring those that we remember on Yom HaZikaron. So today we will celebrate, and we'll once again send the signal to those in Israel that we stand with them, that we send our love, and that we use their resilience and passion for life and commitment to each other as an example for all of diaspora Jewry. And I also believe that we need to let the world hear us. The world needs to see us supporting the only Jewish state in the world. And we need to let them see us defend Israel's right to defend itself. So let's enjoy today with our community. I'm Yisrael Chai, and I am honored now to turn the program over to Mo Lewis.
All right, thanks, Todd. Couldn't agree more with everything you said. Kind of funny. I didn't realize we had this commonality, but when I was finishing up high school, I had an opportunity to come here and play baseball for a Division II school in Wisconsin, and I chose not to because I wanted to meet my commitment as an Israeli citizen and give back to the country by serving for 3 years. So I did end up playing in a Division III school after the military, but obviously I decided to make that decision after high school, and it meant a lot to me, and I don't regret anything about it. It was one of the best decisions I've made. So good for you. We made a similar decision, so I totally understand. All right, so with that, I've been asked to speak a little bit about my IDF experience, Israel Defense Forces. I thought I'd start first a little bit by kind of talking about the lead up to what it means to be an Israeli citizen or a child growing up and leading up to that service in the IDF, right? So I was born in Jerusalem, lived my whole life there through elementary school, middle school, and high school, and there in Israel, as you all know, it's mandatory to serve in the military, and you grow up with a sense of pride and a cultural desire to give back. For the most part, I would say most Israeli children coming up in Israel know that it's extremely important to take part in that part of the country where you serve your years in the military. It's not by choice, and that's because it's extremely necessary, right? When you're surrounded by countries that are not necessarily your friends, and you have enemies, and you're the only Jewish state, as Todd alluded to. So growing up throughout, especially high school, we had a lot of activities and groups that really helped us prepare for military service, right? As if I grew up in a country like America, right, as an American teenager, there isn't really something preparing you because it's not mandatory. There's no need to have anything in preparation for you turn 18 and now you're going to serve 3 years in the military, right? It would be a huge learning curve. It'd be a huge shock to the system for an 18-year-old to just jump in without thinking, without knowing or preparing properly. So as I went through high school, and it was very obvious, and it started in PE. What we had done is our teachers in the PE class would have programs for us during school hours and after school hours. All right, and you sign up for the ones after school, but the ones during school were meant for everybody to prepare you. And it wasn't let's go play basketball, let's play football, let's run track. It was specific, lower level military type. Prepare yourself for when you're going to be, 18, graduate from high school, and jump into the military, right? Whether you're going to be, what we call a kravi, which means you're, infantry, I think is what I would say. I don't know if it's lost in translation, but whether you're going to be, at the front lines, or whether you're going to have a desk job in the military that's just as important, intelligence, etc. They took the time to really prepare us. I personally signed up for after school programs as well because I was extremely motivated to want to be in an impactful unit in the military, right? I'll give another example of something that actually doesn't even come from school, but from the military itself. I want to say about 2-3 times a year, there's a day called Yom Ha'atzmaut. Okay, and Israelis know what that means. I'm not sure exactly how to translate. Sayeret is like another name for a unit or infantry group. So Yom Ha'atzmaut is for high school kids, right? And I say kids because we were kids, right? High school kids, and we spend a day, right, at Machon Weizmann up in central Israel, where they run us through extremely physical and mentally exhausting drills. And the way it is portrayed, so when I was 17 or 18, taking part in one of these days, it was a tryout, right? I saw it as a tryout. Folks that play, sports, team sports, and whatnot, and anything you need to try out for, kind of have a feel for what that feels like. But this was a tryout, almost in a sense, for the military, right? You go through this excruciating day. For example, they make us run up and down sand dunes for hours, okay? And they want to see how far you can go and really be mentally tough while getting exhausted, right? I mean, they're not gonna. We drink, we do all that, but it's very difficult on a 17 or 18-year-old, and they want to see what you're capable of physically and mentally, because that way you can get put on what we call a maslul, Okay, and that's a track. For example, I think that's the correct translation. So, for example, everybody knows what a track is in college. This is a track in the military, right? And some kids want to go to one of the best units, right? Sayeret Matkal, for example, is like the Navy SEALs. I think it would be considered in America. But in order to get, you can't just sign up for something like that. And this is a path for teenage kids to go and try out and show what they're able to do prior to the day where they show up at the Army base and get drafted. Okay. So moving from there, I thought that was a great day. I think it's great that they do that. It really helps motivated teenagers like myself show up and try to prove, hey, I can be in a very impactful unit and really serve my country to the highest degree, right? But with that, I thought maybe I'd walk you guys through how it was, the first day and maybe going into my basic training in late 2005, right? So I did that Yom Ha'atzmaut. I got pretty good marks, and I had a trajectory of a track that I would have been going on. And then on the day of, right, you show up, and I had my 3-month basic training in a base in Binyamina, Israel. For those of you who know the geography, right? It's a well-known base for basic training, and it was 3 months. And before I go into some details, the best part, and I'm very happy. I mean, like I said to Todd, taking part in my military service was one of the best things that I've ever done in my life, right? It's built my character, it developed my work ethic, it's allowed me to have a level of camaraderie that I otherwise would not have had. And it helps me in my daily life and with my relationships and my friends and my work and everything around it. So it was one of the best 3 years of my life. Okay. And so showing up to basic training with 30, 40, 50 other strangers, per se, of kids my age, there was a social aspect too, right? You don't just suddenly show up and you're all hoorah and you're on the same team and you're trying to do everything, and it can be a little daunting, right? It's like showing up to college, but it's not class, it's military training. So it was pretty big shock to the system. So I showed up in Binyamina, and they took us out of the buses, single file. We lined up. They split us up in smaller groups, and we each got a I don't know the term in English for the smallest mattress. So like there's king, queen, full size, double. What's the one that's like one mattress about two? A twin. Okay, so we each got a twin mattress, about 2, maybe 3 inches thick at most, on a steel, bed that just fit that frame. Maybe, under COVID rules, it would be completely non-compliant because we maybe were a foot apart from each other when we laid in bed. And we were in these big tents, right? They were not an indoor sleeping arrangement at all. It was like a circus tent, and you would have 15 beds on one side, 15 on the other, and there were 3 or 4 tents in a row in a certain section of the base, right? And so it would be like 30 of us under this tent, and we'd have our little bed. And first day, you come in and they assign you an M16, and that in itself, I felt like I was one of the more prepared kids or teenagers, but that in itself was really, wow, that's daunting. You think about it, it's like to carry something with such a tremendous impact in certain ways, but the funny thing is, and a lot of you may not know this because this is how they do it, it was just the M16. There was no bullets, no nothing. It was purely at first, on day one, this is yours. You have to take ownership. There's nothing in it that, is really dangerous unless you use it as an axe, right? But the goal of assigning this to you for the first, I want to say at least a week, was just, you need to take care of this. You need to put this under your mattress when you go to bed. You need to take it with you to the bathroom. You are never going to let this thing out of your sight, because it is an extremely dangerous thing that in the wrong hands could be very, very bad. And as a now that you're here, you are now an adult, and you are, a soldier, and you need to be extremely responsible with it. And it was pretty intense. I mean, we're 18-year-old, 19-year-old kids, sleeping in the tent. We got these M16s, empty ones under our pillows every night. And, God forbid somebody left it somewhere. It's not like leaving your wallet or your purse somewhere and coming back for it. I mean, it was a big deal. And so they gave us a week or two to really get accustomed, make it like a regular thing, because once you have, live ammunition with your weapon, God forbid you were negligent or irresponsible, right? So that was really, I can remember that real clearly, right? And then, okay, so then the camaraderie piece was tremendous. So like I said, they split us into subgroups. So I think there were maybe 100 of us, and we would be 5 or 6 groups for every single class and training. And they would assign captains, just like you would on like a team, to try to keep the group together, to try to keep the camaraderie, the focus. It was a daily thing, 5, 6, 7 courses a day, with meal breaks, etc. And as an 18-year-old, 19-year-old kid, it was a very different. It was an extremely different transition from just being in high school to moving on to the next phase of your life, right? It was personally, I wish everybody could experience that, maybe without taking 3 years out of their life if that's not what they really want. But I wish it was something everybody could experience. And then, try not to ramble on, because there's so much I could talk about while I was there. But so I got through my basic training. One of the things that, again, was difficult, but has made me stronger in a sense as a person and my character, is we'd have to first of all stay there for a month at a time, right? So I'm sleeping in this tent for a month. I don't get to go home. I don't see my family. All I'm doing is hanging out with these new folks that I just met. We're sleeping the same, we're showering, we're eating meals together, which were not the tastiest meals, might I add. We'd have activities where we would eat meals that were field-based meals. So we'd each get a box with a can of tuna, a can of, I think you call it Spam in English. It was a can of Spam. We would get 4 slices of bread. We'd get chocolate spread and peanuts. That was the box. That was the contents of our meal when we would have field-based training away from the base. Okay, and it would come with a can opener, which I don't know if most of you have seen. It's not like a twist can opener. It just has the blade and a handle, and you have to force it in to the side and just wedge it around. I mean, it was the first couple of times I tried to do that, I was like, this is impossible. I mean, can't they just give me a can opener? What do you think I am? I'm not Rambo. I just want to open a can of tuna and put on my sandwich. But hey, now I can do it. It was that back in the day, it wasn't that, the can openers weren't, necessarily so easy. So it was pretty funny and pretty cool. And then, so what I will say is, during the 3 months of my basic training, as I was away from home, we'd have patrol and guarding duties for the base. Now, they weren't in, within enemy lines or anything extremely dangerous, but we weren't too far from the border. And what we would have to do is we would have shifts where we would stand in a tower, right, with our weapons, and have to be completely alert, anywhere from 2 to 4 to 8 hours at a time. And what they would do is they would equal the time you're on shift to the time you get to sleep. So the most difficult one was the 2 or 4 hours, right? So imagine you're expected to be, you're 18 years old, you're expected to focus for 2 to 4 hours at a time. And then you come back to your tent with your little, mattress, and you have either 2 or 4 hours to rest and eat. So literally 2 hours, 2 hours, 2 hours, 2 hours. I mean, getting sleep during that time was not easy, right? And so to be able to make it through that type of rigorous demand of the patrol 2 to 2 and 4 to 4, that was one of the most difficult things, right? You fall asleep on, if it was life or death and you're falling asleep in the tower, you could cost people lives. And so they took it very seriously. Our commanders would go around and make sure everybody's alert. But we had kids, that couldn't stay up. They couldn't do it, 2, 3 patrols in. And, obviously they were penalized, but we learned really how to really focus when it's hard, right? I mean, mothers can relate even more to this, right? When you have a child and you're just up all night and you get an hour here and an hour there, and this kid is, crying. I mean, it's like you're exhausted, right? But you have to stay alert and you have to take care of your baby, right? And in the same way, not exactly, it's not apples to apples, but it's the closest comparison I could think of. You have to stay awake and alert, because if something happens on your watch, you have to make sure that you're protecting everybody else, right? You're responsible for the rest of the people on that base when it's happening, where you're patrolling or where you're in the guard tower. Okay. All right. Before I just want to talk a little bit more about how the military kind of is structured and where I ended up serving for the most of my service. I know the questions was probably going to be more at the end, but I like to take a pause because I don't want to do all the talking the whole time and then take a few questions. Anybody have any questions or comments so far on what I spoke about?
Hey, Mo, thanks for doing this. I'm curious about that, just to go back to that tryout day when you were still in high school. You said you had to kind of run up on the sand dunes. What were just out of curiosity, what were some of the other things that they were doing to kind of try you out? And also, is there any other things they were doing sort of in high school, from like junior high school, to kind of get people mentally thinking about the military?
Yeah, no, great question. Yeah. So on Yom Ha'atzmaut, I mean, the thing I remember the most, because it was the most difficult, was hours of running up and down sand dunes, right? And not just quitting, right? There were plenty of kids that just flat out quit. And, in retrospect, thinking about it, at the time I was like, wow, I can't believe they quit. But now in retrospect, they're 17-year-old kids, whether they really want it or not, as bad as they want, I can't blame some of those kids for just being like, I physically can't do it anymore. I'm done. You know what I mean? It's natural. I mean, if you took, that many kids and put them in that situation. Other things they did was they team us up, right? And they make us do like push-ups to exhaustion, right? And then we would team up. So I would do push-ups to exhaustion with somebody, and then we would switch, and they make us do that multiple times, right? And then after that, they would have us, for example, we'd have to run 2 kilometers, right? And they would clock us and see, well, how well did you do? And then they would redo that, and we would have to be as close as possible to what we did and not quit, right? So imagine, doing a set of push-ups to exhaustion, running 2 kilometers as fast as you can, turning back around, doing it again, and then running up and down sand dunes for a couple of hours, right? I mean, you'd have to be a professional athlete not to at least want to quit, right? You'd have to be very motivated to just push through it. And I mean, it wasn't like they were dehydrating us, right? It wasn't like to that extent, even though some kids physically couldn't take it. You would have water, but it would be mostly physical exercises that, when you really think about it, so much of your physical, when you push yourself physically, is mental, right? I mean, when you see people that just, runners and athletes, a lot of what it comes down to is how mentally strong they are, not how physically fit or physically strong they are, right? When you're running up and down these sand dunes, they didn't say, hey, you have to sprint. They just said, you have to keep running. Don't walk, don't stop. Keep running, even if it's not at the fast. Yeah, go ahead.
Ellen had asked a question and she wanted to know, as far as speaking of training, did the men and the boys and girls, but like men and women train together? I say boys and girls because 17 sounds so young, but
So great question. So on our base, so we had the 3 or 4 tents, right, with about 20 or 30 guys with the beds in there. So then there was a row of restrooms, right, separating us from the other tents that had the girls. So women at the same time doing their basic training. But they kept us very segregated during training for obvious reasons with teenage boys, right? They kept us segregated. And the only time that we actually saw, the male and female saw each other was at certain meals during the day. If they overlapped, we'd see each other in what we call a cheder ochel, which I'm sure you guys know. I mean, that's not just to the military. They have that in a lot of places. But yeah. So then, it was really, I remember the day when I finished the 3 months, and it was so great because you felt such a sense of accomplishment, as an 18 or 19-year-old. And even the kids that came in and didn't think they could do it or didn't do as good as they wanted to do throughout the 3 months, just completing basic training and accomplishing that and moving on to a legitimate role in the military you could see how everybody was just in great spirits, right? So I personally, once I finished, I went and served at what we call Pikud Merkaz. And so in the military, there's 4 Pikudim, and I want to say, how would you translate Pikud? It's like there's like 4 main bases where you have military personnel that report up to the general, right? So there's 4. There's Pikud Merkaz, there's Pikud Tzafon, Pikud Ha'oref, and I'm blanking on the fourth. On the fourth one, Pikud Darom. Okay, so there's four different ones, right? And that's outside of the Air Force. So I went to Pikud Merkaz. That was just outside of Jerusalem in Neve Yaakov, and I should probably keep it in the chat. Yeah. So that was 30 minutes outside of Jerusalem, and actually, Brian suggested that I if I could find any pictures that I share. So let me share my screen, and let me see. Wait, can I? Oh, where's share screen? I usually use Microsoft Teams, so I apologize if it takes a second. Entire screen. You know what? It's not allowing me to share. I'm on the browser. Is that can you not share when you're on a browser? Okay, hold on.
I am not entirely sure, but there we go. But I know you can't. I had
There you go.
settings. Perfect.
So do you see a picture of young Moshe?
That's you?
Oh my gosh.
That's me. That's me during a field training. Obviously
Wow.
not as formal because I was able to get a picture in a tent. Some were with tents, some we just dug a hole and slept in a hole, honestly, or on the ground. But that's me. Yeah, that's me. I want to say I'm not quite 19. And obviously I haven't put my button-down shirt on just yet. That was early in the morning. I have my pants and my military boots. Yeah, and that's up north near the Sea of Galilee. And then everybody see my screen still?
Yes.
Okay, so this is the base I served at for almost 3 years, right? After basic training, it's called Kud Merkaz. This ceremony is where they switched over what they call the aluf. Aluf, when you translate that as champion, but obviously that's not the direct translation, it gets lost. Aluf is the one that is commanding one of those pikudim, right? There's 4 of them, and they all report up to the general. the Ramatkal of in the military. So this is a really important ceremony, right in the chatzer, as we call it, of Pikud Merkaz, where they were switching, where the aluf was being replaced with a new one. And I got this picture to share with everybody. And then just like when there's teams, every Pikud had a symbol, and this was our Pikud Merkaz. So when we had, I had, like a jacket with that emblem on it, or, we had a flag. So we would always have that flag up with an Israel flag at our base. And then, since I know I need to wrap up, let me go back into here and unshare my screen. How do I unshare? Cancel. Am I not sharing anymore?
Correct. You are not sharing anymore.
But can you see me?
No.
Okay. Oh, start video. Start my video. Can you see me now? Yeah. Okay, so 2 items of clothing I really wanted to share. So I wore this. This is my 2005 Maccabiah jacket. Okay. And so this was the Jewish Olympic Games that were held in Israel in 2005. And I played on the baseball team for Israel in those. And I can show you the back. Can you see the back? Mm-hmm. Yep. So I wore this today just because it was, Israel Fest Day, and it makes me feel very patriotic. And then the last thing is actually
That's awesome.
something I will have forever. And you get this in the military. Don't tell anybody I still have it, because I don't know if I was supposed to take it when I was done. But this is called a dubon. Okay, this is called a dubon, and a dubon is like a cub, a baby bear, right? A cub, and it's my winter jacket that I had for 3 years serving in the military. It's quite large, and it came in to really good use in Rochester, New York, when I moved there after the military in 2008 to start my undergrad in the freezing cold weather. So I still have that, and I will always, but don't tell anybody, because technically I think I'm supposed to hand it back in. So, all right, with that, I hope you enjoyed what I had to say. I know I rambled on a little bit, but it's not every day I get to talk about what it was like, growing up and preparing to serve and being in the IDF, and now being here and celebrating Israel Day with other Jews that are passionate about the same thing. So thank you very much.
That was fabulous. Thank you.
Thank you, Moshe. Thank you.
Mo,
Thank you.
I got to tell you, man, that was awesome. We talked about this months and months ago. I really appreciate you doing it. And, I messaged Mo separately. I just said, like, I wish we had more time. Like, let's keep going with it. And I would do a part 2 if you thought there was more to share and people.
Yeah, I have plenty, and hopefully if we do a part 2, I felt like I was rambling a little bit, so hopefully I can be.
I don't think you were rambling. I thought it was great, but we could schedule a part 2 maybe later this year.
Sure.
Thank
Mo,
you so
I
much
thought
for
it
doing
was-
that, Mo.
I thought it was great. We can share loof recipes if you'd like.
Sounds good.
Well, I want to say thank you to Mo, and also welcome Shai Rubenstein, who I got a chance to meet Shai a couple weeks ago. He's already done several programs for the community. And he was, at the time, the session I was on, he was talking about Israeli politics and having us, I have a sort of surface level, and he was kind of getting us into the weeds and getting us to pull things apart, understand things. Did a great job with that. And Shai, so welcome to our community. Thank you so much for being here for our Yom Ha'atzmaut celebration. And I'm just going to pass the baton to you for you to take it away.
Well, first of all, shalom to all of you, and good evening from Tel Aviv, Israel. Good morning to you. Here it's almost 8 p.m., so it's nice to see you, and thank you, Brian, and thank you, Aaron and Todd, for this wonderful opportunity to join your celebration to celebrate Israel's Independence Day. So for those who haven't met me yet, my name is Shai Rubenstein. I'm 24 years old, living in Tel Aviv, Israel. During the past 2 years, I was a community shaliach in Howard County, Maryland, which is a suburb of Washington, D.C. And this year, I'm highly excited to be the first ever remote or online shaliach of the Greater Akron Federation, which is a great opportunity for me to meet a wonderful community. and hopefully one day in person, right? So today, without further ado, I would like to share with you what it is like to be an Israeli. You know, after Mo's great session about being a soldier in the IDF, I think there are some other elements that worth mentioning, which is a part, which are part of the greater, I would say, the greater elements of Israeli identity. So I would definitely say that being Israeli is first of all serving in the military and spending your time, running in basic training and from one place to another and sleeping in a tent, like Mo described. And now I would like to share with you some other very interesting and funny elements of life in Israel. So let's get started. By the way, feel free to stop me if you have any questions. Okay, I want to do that very funny and light session. So I'm going to share my screen and hopefully you will enjoy. Are you able to see my screen? All right, so as I promised, today I'm going to speak about what it's like to be an Israeli. And I think the first thing that's worth mentioning, and I guess that Mo might feel the same way, is telling strangers your life story. Like the fact that you're telling strangers your life story becomes normal to you. For you as Americans, I guess that it might be weird a little bit. But in Israel, sometimes you meet a taxi driver, you meet a Christian, you meet somebody new, and then you have this very short small talk. In Israel, we do a very short small talk, and then we dip into, I would say, personal things. So sometimes it happens in Israel that you share your life story with others, and it could be very family because then you understand that you have mutual friends, especially among your peers, people who are at your same age. And especially it's funny because, you don't know that person, you don't know the other person, but you still feel free and feel close to that person to share your life story. And sometimes you even invite strangers to your house, for coffee or for tea. One time, I saw somebody here in the neighborhood who was a bit lost. So, I invited him for a coffee, and it happens a lot in Israel. Sometimes even I was invited. I'll tell you actually a funny story, after stories of the military. One time I got once when I was 18 years old, just before being recruited or drafted to the military, we did a day tour in the Negev, in the military, in the south desert of Israel. And then we got lost. So then somebody helped us, and he gave us a drive to his house, which was like 60 miles north of where we were. And we even slept at his house, without even knowing him until we met in the desert. So that's something very fun in Israel. And sometimes it could be strange, but it is what it is. Another very interesting thing, and I would say a funny thing about Israelis, is avoid being a flyer. Flyer in Hebrew is a sucker or somebody who's like a loser. And the thing is that Israelis work hard not to be friars, not to be that guy who lost money for, I don't know, for government organizations, or that guy who gets a discount, or not to wait in line for things, or trying to be a bit sneaky. So avoid being a flyer means that you will bargain hard. You ensure that you never being ripped off or taken advantage of, and make sure that you're always first. So sometimes Israelis are very funny about it. When you see, I'll give you an example. When once I did grocery, I went to the grocery store for my girlfriend, and we had other things to buy. It was just before the high holidays. And then we saw that it takes a little time, and there are so many people waiting at the checkout. So she sent me there, to wait in the line. And then it took her at least more than 10 minutes to finish our grocery list. And then I was saving our spot for the checkout. So it happens a lot in Israel for these small things, because as I told you, Israelis avoid being fired. So let's watch a short example about it.
This is the Arab market in the old city. They have so many beautiful things to buy. Haggling's a big thing here, and I wanted to learn more about it. So this is Benny. Benny, you understand the art of haggling. What's the first thing I need to know?
You need to tell her that you saw exactly the same item in the other shop, less than €5.
Okay. So wait, but what if that's a lie?
It's a lie.
What's another rule?
In other words, the quality, it's not so good.
It's not so good. That's
Yeah.
insulting. Any other tricks?
Yes, just to argue with him
Argue.
until he will break up and he will take down the price.
I am interested in buying these products. The Jerusalem hat. How much is this?
Honest price, $3.
$3?
10 shekels.
That's bullshit.
Why?
I'm not gonna pay $3 for this hat.
Is it expensive?
$3, that's way too much.
Too much?
Yeah, and guess what? I saw it in another market for much less.
Go ahead, go buy it wherever you like.
No, I don't want to go to that market. I didn't like that market. It had a weird smell. This market I like. I'll buy it at this market, but not for $3. That's bullshit.
Why is it?
I don't know. I've been haggling with you.
Are you angry?
Yes,
I bring
about my
When you
childhood.
have coffee, please, then we talk about business.
I would love to have some coffee with you. That'd be very nice.
Coffee with sugar or without sugar?
This is not the way haggling is supposed to go. How about this one? What's your price?
$150, I mean.
$150? That's bullshit.
So that's not bullshit.
$60 for this guitar.
It's too little, brother. It's too little.
I'll give you 65, 70, 75, 80, 85, 90, 95. How am I doing? How much for the camel?
$10.
$10?
How much you want?
$10.
$10? We give you five.
$5?
Yes. To close. No, for this one.
You're terrible at haggling. Of course, the most sacred site in all of old Jerusalem is this Alabama Heart of Dixie Crimson Tide store. Roll Tide. I'm not touching you. My hands are above you and off to the side. Ah.
Thank you very much.
Nice to see. What is your name?
David.
David.
Yeah.
Do you live here?
Yeah, I live here.
This is beautiful. Thank you. So it's very nice to meet you.
Maybe come drink coffee or something.
We could do a coffee.
My apartment.
You want me to come up to your
I live
apartment?
here.
If I'm done shooting, maybe later on I can come by. You know?
Don't believe me.
You don't believe me? Okay. Tell me about yourself, David.
Today I have 5 kids.
You have 5 kids?
Yeah. And, 19 grandchildren.
You have 19 grandchildren?
Yeah.
Does your family know that you meet strangers on the street and invite them up to your house for coffee? Do they know about that? I worry about you. I don't want you doing that to me. 'Cause I could be crazy. Right?
So as you can see, sometimes it happens that in Israel you meet up strangers and then you ended up having coffee with them at your apartment or your place. Another thing that Israeli like is bandstand boots. This is actually a trend from the past 6 years. So bandstand is actually an Australian boot. However, it's highly popular in Israel. Almost everybody, including me, has it and wear them. It's a simple, unisex, and super comfortable boot. You can wear them for party or even for working. For every occasion and for everything you can wear bandstand. And in Israel, we get it for cheap. We're not flyers. We don't want to become losers, so we bargain for the price. So everybody uses a certain discount or bargain for the price. So bandstand is I would say, a very Israeli boot, although it's made in Australia. Super popular in Israel. Another thing that makes you Israeli or or happens a lot in Israel is using protektia, using connection. So protektia in Hebrew is the word for using connection for your own for your advantage. And protektia, when needed, is whenever you receive a good job or to get a position in the military, or to get a ticket for a certain place. For instance, on Independence Day, there is a very exciting national ceremony for the that marks the end of Yom Ha'atzmaut and opens Yom Ha'atzmaut. So to get tickets for this ceremony that only accommodates 3,000 people, you need to use protection, you need to use connection. So to get something in Israel, sometimes you need to use protection, and that could help you. So this photo, you can see the arrow, and in Hebrew it says, "Slicha, excuse me, do you have יש לך protection? Do you have protection? Do you have connections?" So many Israelis sometimes looking for protection to move forward and to get what they want. Another thing that Mo might agree with me about it, that sometimes Israelis like to show off their military career. In Israel, every retired combat soldier is a military general, right? Everybody who holds a gun in America, every Israeli who holds a gun and served in the military, when he or she comes to America, they show off their military career. People were curious about me and in my military career, although I was not a combat soldier, but people thought that I was at least the bravest Israeli warrior or the bravest Israeli combat soldier, or working for the Mossad, although I was actually training soldiers, so I wasn't combat soldier at all. But this is a very funny thing in Israel, and my father used to be a naval officer, so he every time. When we spoke about when we were young, and we spoke about military things. He presented himself as the master, and every Israeli man who served in the military in a combat position sometimes feels like he's the best general and he knows everything, and that could be very funny. And Israelis like to debate almost on anything, and Israelis like to debate on politics, debate on economy, debate on opinions, debate almost everything, right? Israelis are sometimes hot-headed and vocal, and sometimes it's pretty accurate, but we like to debate and negotiate and kind of argue sometimes. I guess it's a little bit influenced by the high temperatures of the Middle East, so it could be sometimes very funny. I try sometimes, to calm down, to count, as we say in Hebrew, to count from 1 to 10 and then say what I have to say. But that could be very funny in Israel when you see Israelis debating on stupid things. To give you a small example from that, I want to take you the Simpsons visit to Israel, and let's see what happens there.
Cross. Okay, בסדר. Okay, everybody, come on. This shrine contains the rock on which Abraham was going to sacrifice. Shrine contains the rock on which Abraham was going to sacrifice his son. And Muslims believe something too. To find out, hire a Muslim tour guide. That's a barrel of laughs. Anyway, shut your face.
Thanks, but you could stop giving the tour now.
You don't want to do a photo with me? You can hold my gun. I used it in Entebbe. I killed 3 Ugandans.
No thanks.
Before you go in, you fill out comment card.
Okay.
Don't forget the back.
You people are so pushy.
What, Israeli people are pushy? How about you experience a couple of genocides and see how laid back you are? We were purged from Spain. Throw out of there. They allow everybody in Spain, but for us, Jews, no flamenco. Get out. I'm pushy. Please, you, stay there, surrounded by your great enemy, Canada. Try Syria for 2 months, then we'll see who's pushy.
So as you can see, Israelis are getting sometimes hot temperament and like to debate on almost everything. Another very weird and Israeli cool thing is to drink chocolate milk from a bag. That's very common in Israel. When we want to get our chocolate milk, we just buy this small, nice bag, and it's actually a plastic bag that you rip off from the corner by using your mouth and teeth. And it could be very weird for you as American. But Israel, it's super popular. I can tell you that for years, my parents gave me a chocolate milk bag for school. You know, everybody in my class, all my classmates were looking at me, and then the following day they got one of their own. It's very popular even in the military for the soldiers. You know, nowadays, you know, I try to avoid drinking it because I try to be more healthy. However, I think it's a very funny Israeli thing, you know, to use a bag for drinking chocolate milk.
Can I just say, Shai, it was the best in any summer camp that I did in Israel, like day camp, or normally it was day, not overnight. For lunch, they would give us a bag of chocolate milk and just a roll, like nothing on it, just like a hot dog roll without not sliced, right? So it was like empty, like just like a roll of bread with a bag of chocolate milk. That was your lunch. That was like the thing you had. And it was great. I loved it. I loved it. And real quick before I forget, because he had a great slide on protectia. So a great example for you guys, protectia, right? So during COVID, the Lippman School and JCC were able to get Purell because of the protectia, right? That's why you have protectia to get soap and sanitizer during a pandemic. That's just to give you a real life example of protectia.
Well, thank you for your comment, and you know that's very very true. You know, my childhood memory is that bread roll with the chocolate bag. So it's very funny and very weird and very cheap, I have to say. But that's part of your memories in Israel, and I think it's very funny. So let's move on. Before that, anyone has any questions, guys? Before we continue. All right, so let's move on. All right, so another funny thing about Israelis that Israelis like to say the Yiddish word of nu in every sentence. Like nu means so, or go on, or like keep going, keep talking. So, or if you forget somebody's name, like nu, what's his name? Nu, what's going on here? So that's a very funny thing in Hebrew that we like to say nu, and I think it's, you know, it's a bit connected to the fact that we in Israel, you know, live in a very hot country, you know, in the desert. And sometimes we don't have patience and we're pushy, as you saw, as you watch on The Simpsons. So I think that is a very funny thing about Israelis. Now, there are some other funny slang words in Hebrew, and I want to show you a short example of that.
איך אתה אוכל את זה?
איכס!
איכס? איזה גועל.
איכס, מה זה?
איזה חברה יש לך? כוסית.
איך הצלחת? איזה יופי!
איזה מלך אתה?
מה אתה אומר?
וואי וואי וואי, איך אין לי כוח ללמד היום.
מה, מחר? וואי וואי וואי. בהצלחה.
וואי וואי, כמה עבודה יש לי היום.
וואי וואי וואי, איזה כיף היה.
וואי 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 וואי. חבל הזמן. מה? 2 דקות, רגע.
נו, באמת.
איזה מפגר.
אוף, אני לא מאמין שאני צריך לעבוד היום עד הערב.
אוף, באמת? איזה באסה.
So as you can see in Hebrew slang, we use stupid words like nu, uf, or why, and they have different meanings for the same word. Like as you saw, why would be like, wow, that's amazing, or like, oh, that's a bummer, that's bad, or too bad. So in Hebrew, sometimes we have funny moments, and that's, I think, another example of how Israelis are a bit pushy and straightforward. And I find it very interesting. So Israelis are always being late, no matter what happens. Israelis will find excuses and be late. And sometimes I like to say that I'm too busy to be organized, and many Israelis are being late for almost everything. For instance, yesterday on Shabbat we had a family lunch. It was scheduled for 1 p.m. Everybody showed up at 1:30 at 1:30. It was a bit funny because my grandma, my Jewish grandma, was ready exactly at 1 p.m. Although everybody showed up 30 minutes later. So Israelis sometimes are too busy to be organized. And another thing that makes us Israelis these days, sorry. Another thing that makes us Israelis, especially this week or these 10 days of the year, starting from Yom HaShoah through Yom HaZikaron, Israeli Remembrance Day, to Yom Ha'atzmaut, Israeli Independence Day. I think that that's what I call the Israeli high holidays, not the Jewish high holidays, the Israeli high holiday, the fact we mark, and remember Yom HaShoah, remember all 6 million Jewish victims during the Shoah of World War II. Then we remember all of our almost 24,000 fallen soldiers and citizens who killed to protect the state of Israel. And that day, Yom HaZikaron, when we stand up and stop everything during the siren, there are 2 minutes of siren on Yom HaZikaron, 1 minute of siren on the eve of Yom HaZikaron, and 2 minutes of siren on Yom HaShoah. These sirens remind us there is a huge cost, a huge price of having a strong and an independent Jewish state. And I think that this week, these 10 days, from Yom HaShoah through Yom HaZikaron to Yom Ha'atzmaut, really makes us feel united and feel and have the feeling of solidarity to our people, to our nation. And I think that that's remarkable. That's something that only Israel has. When I spent my years in America, I was a bit surprised by the Memorial Day of the United States. The fact that everybody goes out and then goes to the shopping malls, or goes out to the nature. And here in Israel, we're barbecuing, or opening the pool. That's what happened in Maryland. It was opening the swimming pool day. And here in Israel, it's a bit different, though. And, the fact that Israel's Remembrance Day, Yom HaZikaron, is so close to Yom Ha'atzmaut really emphasizes and highlights the fact that, unfortunately, the state of Israel is not safe, and we don't have complete peace with our neighbors, and therefore we have to serve in the military, and we have to contribute to our people, we have to contribute to our country. And unfortunately, we still have conflicts to make sure that our country is protected. So being an Israeli sometimes could be very funny, sometimes could be very pushy, and sometimes could be very exciting and touching, especially when speaking about Yom HaZikaron and Yom Ha'atzmaut, when we celebrate our independence. The fact that Israel is only 73 years old, I think it's pretty amazing. My grandparents are older than the state of Israel. I guess that some of your friends or your parents are older than the state of Israel. And the fact that we finally, after 2,000 years without having a Jewish state, we finally have a Jewish state which is strong, which is a startup nation. This is something very remarkable and important. And I do want to mention, before we conclude, the fact that Israel, throughout its years, was very relied on the American Jewish community. And I think that the fact that we bridge between our countries and we bridge between our communities as Americans and Israelis, as American Jews and Israeli Jews, the fact that we're connected and we are there for each other, we hear what you have to say in Israel, and you hear what we have to say. The fact that we're connected really helped us to make sure that Israel is protected. And from its early days, from the first Israeli-Arab War in 1948, the Israeli Independence War, American Jews were there to help Israel. There are more than 3,500 American Jews were killed on the Israeli Independence War in 1948. And since then, there are many American Jews who decide to make Aliyah or to serve in the IDF, in the Israeli military, or to love Israel and lobby for Israel and and support Israel. And that support is very critical for Israel. The fact that Israel has no better than America, America has no better friend from Israel. This is thanks to you guys, thanks to the American Jewish community, and everybody in Israel is very excited and thankful and grateful for that. And I think it's worth mentioning that, especially in Yom Ha'atzmaut, as we celebrate Israeli independence, but we also celebrate our connections as Jews, our sisterhood and brotherhood from both sides of the ocean. And I think that although we're a bit far from each other in terms of distance, and we in Israel are 7 hours ahead of you guys, I still feel that I'm talking to you physically, and the fact that we're able to listen to each other and partner with each other really makes Israel stronger than ever. So thank you very much for this opportunity to meet some of you and to see some of you once again. And if you have any questions, that's will be a great time for them.
I don't have a question. I just want to the psh is something I picked up in Israel when I was there many years ago, and I started doing it. And my wife Becky, even when we were dating, she was like she didn't know from it. She's Jewish, but she just hadn't really. She'd been in Israel, but not had spent as much time there, and just didn't know about it. And she always makes fun of me because I still do the psh every once in a while, and somehow it's stuck in my vocabulary. And so when you showed that, I was very pleased by that. So thank you. Any other questions from anybody here for Shai?
I sent one to Shai that had come to me, so I passed it along.
All right, now I can see that.
Do Israelis find it annoying that they always have to be thankful to us? And we actually rely on you to keep our students strong and to keep helps us keep anti-Semitism away from us. But do Israelis say we're always thanking Americans for their support? And I think I would pray that 90% of us would want to support you no matter what, without the thanks. We don't need that. We are so proud to be having a state, a Jewish state. So I was just feeling, well, probably there are Israelis saying, oh, those, what Americans, they always think we're pretty pushy when we come too, to Israel to visit.
Well, honestly, I think that, when I like the good old saying that 2 Jews, 3 opinions, 2 Israelis, 4 opinions, right? So in Israel, you can find various opinions. However, I do believe that the majority of Israelis is not shy to be thankful. It's not a secret that thanks to American Jewry as well as European Jewry, Israel is able to be strong and able to get support, especially when speaking of foreign aid and international relations. And I think it doesn't cost money, or it's not hard to be thankful. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? And the fact is that really we need each other. So we should be thankful to you guys, and you should be thankful to us. And and I think part of being Jew is being thankful. So I'm not shy to thank you all for supporting Israel, as I'm sure that you're thankful for the fact that I'm here to support you. So I think that this relationship, bi-directional relationship, that we support you and you support us, I think that's what is important. And especially as Jews, we have to show solidarity. And the fact that Israel and America are the 2 largest Jewish communities on earth really, makes us be responsible for other Jewish communities. And, I'm so happy that there are so many joint ventures of Israeli Jews and American Jews. Other remote, Jewish communities all over the world. For instance, this year during COVID, more than 4,000 Ethiopian Jews made Aliyah to Israel. During a year of COVID, during a year that Israel has difficulties, and that operation, flying and helping those Ethiopian Jews to make it to Israel was supported by the Jewish Federations of North America and by the Sfut Yehudit, by the Jewish Agency. And that's a great partnership. You know, that's a great example of that important alliance, that's important partnership of our two Jewish communities.
Shai, achla presentacja. You've made me be a little homesick now. You know, I've been in Ohio for about, I want to say, just under 8 years, and I've been in the States for just under 12. And yeah, it was a great presentation. You hit on all the things that, you know, I remember. And when I talk to my friends and family back in Israel, we definitely use all those news and all those psh and all those. So you know, great job. And I'm gonna have to visit sometime soon because you made me want to go back for a visit after COVID.
Well, thank you, my friend. We're waiting for you, and hopefully once you visit Israel, let me know, and we'll catch up, and I'll invite you to my place to do a coffee, right? And I do want to announce, and I'm very excited about the fact that Israel is actually open for Americans and for international tourism. Israel just announced last week, especially for Yom Ha'atzmaut, Israel is reopened for tourists starting from May 23rd. So all Jews and non-Jews who want to visit Israel are welcome to do so. If you guys are vaccinated, you are welcome to visit Israel starting from late May, and we're very excited about it because there's so many people like you who miss Israel and love Israel and want to be again in Israel, and I'm sure that you're so proud about the fact that Israel is probably the safest country in terms of COVID. And the fact that Israel is completely reopened, I just reserved tickets for a live music festival. There are football games in Israel with attendance, and everything is completely reopened. So we guys are waiting for you.
Well, with that, I will wrap us up. What a good thing to go on. We need each other, right? Jews all around the world need each other, whether you're in Israel or America or elsewhere. And get ready to go travel to Israel, right? That's a good plug once you get your vaccination. I want to say thank you to Mo Lewis for his presentation and his heart and his offerings today and his photographs and giving his experience about being in IDF. I want to thank Shai Rubenstein for giving us little bits and pieces of what it's like to be an Israeli. And thank you both. Thank you everyone for showing up today. Thank you for Todd for his opening remarks. Hag Sameach for everyone. I hope you have fun the rest of the day. And if you're up for it, there's a concert at 4 p.m. You just go to jewishackron.org and find it, click on it, boom, pops open. It's with Jewish Rock Radio. It should be a lot of fun. I think one of the guests is Rick Recht. Is that correct, Aaron? Rick Recht, maybe? Yes, people are nodding.
Yes.
So Rick Recht, if you haven't heard him, he's great. He's one of my faves. Anyway, thanks so much. Hag Sameach. We'll see you next time.
תודה רבה, thank you all.
Thank you, תודה שי. שבוע טוב.
שבוע טוב, שמחתי להכיר. Nice meeting you all. Nice seeing those who I met last time, and I'm looking forward to seeing you next session. So thank you, Aaron and Todd and Brian, for organizing these amazing sessions. תודה רבה.
Yes, thank you, Aaron and Brian, very much.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah.